What's up, guys? Connor O'Hanlon here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. And today is an enormous announcement day in American politics in response to what happened last night. That is going to be the entirety of what we're discussing tonight, and that is the 2024 campaign already kicking off 1 week after the 2022 midterm elections because of former president, twice impeached, Donald Trump announcing his presidency last night. So today we're going to be going over his announcement speech. We're going to look at his a fact check from CNN on the claims throughout his speech. We're going to play that at like a higher speed because that's a bit of a longer clip. And I think that everybody that is watching this at some point, whether you do it before or after watching this episode or listening to this episode, you should go and listen to Donald Trump's full speech in totality. You should listen to, and we'll get into some of the specifics, you should listen to the, quote, agenda that he has and the message that is being proposed in this speech. I'll get to my reaction after, but I want to note today is being a pre-recorded episode, so I apologize for not being live. I have a nonprofit event going on tonight, so I apologize for not being live to see what you guys have to say about this. But please go on over to our Discord server, which will be linked in the description box below. Join us there and let me know what you think, or leave a comment on this video what you think of the 2024 campaign already kicking off. What do you think about Trump doing this? And we'll talk about the Republican Civil War that may or may not be incoming. We will see. But I'm going to first start off with the actual announcement. And let me pull up my screen so I can show you what Trump had to say in his announcement. So I'm just taking the 2-minute clip that ABC News has. I will stop it before they start pontificating and opining on things, because that's my job here today. But this is where I have the video from. So let's take a look. So here we go. This is right as he's announcing. So of course they always say, it's going to be at 9 o'clock and he's going to be 30 minutes. And of course he was late and it wasn't 30 minutes, but he doesn't stick to the teleprompter. I don't use a teleprompter either, if you can't tell, so I don't fault anybody for not using one, but this is a speech that you'd think would be pretty important to be on the teleprompter, but let's check it out.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. So many incredible friends and family here tonight. It's such a beautiful thing. Some people say, how do you speak before so many people all the time? When there's love in the room, it's really easy, if you want to know the truth. It really is. You ought to try it sometime. Together we will be taking on the most corrupt forces and entrenched interests imaginable. Our country is in a horrible state. We're in grave trouble. This is not a task for a politician or a conventional candidate. This is a task for a great movement that embodies the courage, confidence, and the spirit of the American people. This is a movement. This is not for any one individual. This is a job for tens of millions of proud people working together from all across the land and from all walks of life, young and old, black and white, Hispanic and Asian, many of whom we have brought together for the very, very first time. If you look at the numbers, if you look at what's happened with Hispanic, with African American, with Asian, and just look at what's happening. This is a party that has become much bigger, much stronger, much more powerful, can do much more good for our country.
There you have it. That is Trump's 2-minute clip basically of what his idea of his movement is. He thinks it's much broader and inclusive this time around. We will see about that. Now, let's take that last bit first, though, before I start diving into a little bit of what I think of what the speech was in its totality. He's not exactly wrong with the performance of Republicans, specifically in the midterms, with more, not, I wouldn't say African Americans. They don't have data showing that like big African American swing went for Republicans, but specifically in Florida, where there is a large Hispanic population, specifically immigrants from Cuba and Venezuela and these countries that are known as socialist countries and coming to America, et cetera, et cetera. You guys probably all know the drill. But the performance of Republicans, specifically even Ron DeSantis, who we will come back to in a second, was swayed towards Republicans. Notably, Maxwell Frost won in Florida, who was the first Generation Z congressperson. We didn't really talk about that much beforehand. And, of course, that is an exception to the rule in the state. Now, I think having a young progressive voice is probably the way to counteract some of this sway towards Republicanism there. But besides the point, he's actually saying something that is truthful there. And that should be concerning, because I know I personally don't take anybody's vote for granted when I'm running or when I'm trying to get a candidate to focus on outreach. You have to talk to everybody. You have to get out and talk to as many people as you can across the aisle: independents, Democrats, super Democrats, Republicans, etc. Green Party, Libertarian. You have to go and talk with them. You might not win them all, but that's how you get and build a consensus. You can start talking about issues that face different communities and build a movement. Now, I don't think that the issues that he is talking about is building this movement that he is alluding to in the speech, but in theory, that is possible, based on some of the stuff that he is alluding to and the performance in the midterms. But overall, I would say that the speech was boring, low energy, as he would call low energy Jeb. But because of that, I think it falls in the line of a good speech would not be saying it right. A good for Trump speech. A stuck mostly to the teleprompter, said exactly what it said. For the most part, he did go off script a few times, and that kept it back on the point. And the points that he's driving home are not the 2020 messages. He's reverting back to the 2015, 2016 coming down the escalator messages. He is reverting to talking about the wall, as we'll come back to. He's talking about immigration over and over again. He's talking about crime, which is an extension of 2016 messaging that he had, but also the 2022 Republican message. He's talking about these things that make his xenophobia, racism, and bigotry effective for his base. The people that he is already trying to, placate to and be like, nope, I didn't change. I'm right here. I'm the same Donald Trump from 2016 that you remember and you loved. And I'm going to trigger the libs, and they're going to be so upset when I'm the candidate. Now, I would be remiss, because we did talk about it slightly last week, to not talk about the Pied Piper strategy, which, if you don't know, which I wouldn't blame you if you didn't know, but that was a strategy taken by Hillary Clinton in 2015, 2016 to boost Donald Trump. And this is not like she made it up, but this was something that she did, and it's been followed suit, and I'll loop it back to successes after. But It was a strategy that Hillary Clinton employed in 2016 to boost Donald Trump in the Republican primary so that she could go head to head against him. And because she felt that that was the best person to go against. Now, in retrospect, that might have been the worst person that she could have gone against. She would have probably beaten Jeb Bush. She probably would have beaten Marco Rubio. She probably would have beaten John Kasich. Run down the line. She probably would have beaten Ted Cruz. But Trump exemplified something different than they did, not in message, not in policy, but in rhetoric and how he holds himself. So, by boosting him, it helped him functionally win the primary. Now, I don't think that that's like the reason why he won the primary, but it doesn't hurt that investment was there, that boost was there for him. Now, I bring that up because I don't know that the same thing will. I am likely 100%. I would bet all of my money that nobody is employing this with him this time, and whether it's Joe Biden or it's anybody else that's running for the Democratic nomination, but it's worth noting that happened in Pennsylvania. Josh Shapiro ran that same type of concept to get Doug Mastriano to be his opponent, and it worked. Now, I was skeptical that it would work because of my opinion of what happened in 2016, but it is notable that it did work in Pennsylvania. And I don't think it'll happen here again in 2024 where he gets boosted, but Donald Trump is polarizing. So I think that electorally, DeSantis, and again, we will come back to the incoming civil war. DeSantis represents a bigger threat electorally than Trump because of the false narrative of returning to normalcy, because he doesn't seem as extreme, although he's adopted the same mannerisms of Trump, which is worth noting. But in office, the two of them couldn't be more similar. If DeSantis or Trump was in office, they would be practically one and the same. So it's important that we don't miss the ball, and we can play it as we have to. It's a long-term game here. I tweeted out it was a great 6 days of a break from electoral politics working, but right back into it. So that's my opinion of the speech, but some of the parts that he was alluding to, of course, were made up, exaggerated. That might be the best way of putting it. He blamed Biden for being horrible, doing this, that, and the other thing. And of course, let's point out again, you can go back and watch a clip that we put out last week of an old episode, but talking about patriotism and nationalism, and talking about how Democrats are somehow always labeled as anti-American or anti-patriotic versus Trump, who goes up there bitching and moaning and complaining and saying that America is horrible, we're a laughingstock. But he is somehow not labeled because that honestly is the most anti-American stuff that I've ever heard. And someone like, frankly, you and me probably, that care about the country, that care about the betterment of the people, that care about the upholding of institutions like our democracy, we are real patriots. And I'd say that even though I disagree with Biden on a good amount of policy, I'm to his left on many things, but I believe that he is a patriot and cares for the country more so than himself, which cannot be said about Trump. You can see it in his video, and I don't have the clips of it, but he even says remember back in 2018, there was the caravan. That was such a good name for the caravan. I came up with that. And everything was, we did this. And again, the caravan was nonsense, and him talking about the wall is nonsense, and him hyping up, oh, we did this, that, and the other thing, but all of it's nonsense. But then he'll be like, yeah, but I did that, I made that, I came up with that. It's effective in getting his message out. It is effective in convincing people that he is doing all this himself. And you know what? Some of it is him. Some of it is the stuff that he did. He can own that. You know, he can own the bigotry and the xenophobia. That's him. But you can tell that it is not about the Republican Party. You can tell that it is not about America. You can tell that it is not about unifying. You can tell that it is not about something bigger. It is about him. And that might be his undoing in the long term. If I had to take a guess about something, I don't foresee DeSantis or anybody else coming in and taking it from him right now. I think it's at least 75% likely that he gets the nomination. But with that, there's more specifics that I wanted to look at in this speech. And CNN has a good quick fact check. It's about 3 minutes, and we'll go over some of the specifics. I might pause it in between. But this first clip is about the climate and the Green New Deal, which, of course, has not been implemented. Joe Biden doesn't support the Green New Deal. He never, even said he did. He's not implementing anything that's a Green New Deal. The Inflation Reduction Act, which does help the climate, is not the Green New Deal. So just prefacing all of this with that.
The Green New Deal and the environment, which they say may affect us in 300 years, is all that is talked about, and yet nuclear weapons, which would destroy the world immediately, are never even discussed as a major threat. Can you imagine? They say the ocean will rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 200 to 300 years.
So the fact check on that?
I counted more than 20 false claims in this speech, guys, and This was one of them. Sea levels are expected to rise way more than former President Trump said. He said 1/8 of an inch in 200 to 300 years. Well, the U.S. government's own National Ocean Service says on its website that sea level along the U.S. coastline is projected to rise on average 10 to 12 inches in the next 30 years, which they say will be as much as the rise measured over the last 100 years. And Trump also strongly suggested there that climate change in general may only affect us Americans in 300 years. We know that is grossly inaccurate. It is affecting the U.S. today in a wide variety of ways.
Mm-hmm. And what else did you?
Let's also note that the party that is running vehemently against immigrants, they don't really care about refugees, will not admit and will not acknowledge the fact that climate change will create an inordinate amount of immigration, relocation, and refugees based on lack of water, based on the destruction of food chains, and based on displacement for housing. This is something that is not a question of if, it is a question of when. If we don't, and I guess there is a if in that statement, but if we do not take action now, which of course that is not their goal. Even the Democrats are too slow on this right now, but at least they're doing something. At least there's the goal of doing something. The Republican Party, specifically led by Donald Trump, is still vehemently anti-climate change and anti-climate science. They don't understand that, they understand. They refuse to acknowledge the reality and push it down and say, what about the economy? Oh, no, that's actually not even that bad. Or Ben Shapiro even saying you could just move and sell your house, even though you'd have to sell your house to somebody, of course, because nobody's going to buy a house that's underwater.
You find you said so many of them. He made this claim about rising prices when it comes to especially Turkey. Listen to this.
You can't get anything, and good luck getting a turkey for Thanksgiving. Number one, you won't get it, and if you do, you're going to pay 3 to 4 times more than you paid last year.
Okay, so turkey prices aren't up 300%, right?
They are not. They are up, but not even close to that. You can go look at the data online from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Depending on what kind of frozen bird you get, the average national price is up about 7% to 10% over the same week last year. Obviously, that's not nothing. People feel it, but it's not 200% or 300%. So the former president is exaggerating about a price that people can feel and see themselves.
One of his big, he ran on it last time and he's running on it again, is the border wall, but he made this claim saying it was completed.
Just real quick, if you get a $30 turkey and it went up 7%, which is not necessarily the case across the board, but it went 7%. The extra $2 is not going to break the bank for people that are getting gigantic turkeys. To say that a tripling in price, like, this is the type of narrative and rhetoric that just gets unquestioned and passes for fact in the right-wing sphere, on the AM radio and on these Fox freaking news channels and Newsmax and OAN, and there's never an actual, like, you can talk about inflation and talk about the actual impact on working class people, but don't say, oh, you can't get a turkey, oh, you can't get presents for your kids. Remember, that was the other thing last year that was a big, oh, you won't even be able to get your presents for your children in 2021, which of course, once then Christmas happens and all this stuff is normal and capitalism functions the way that it was for the consumerist holiday, you can get everything that you want. And they did. And then this is going to be another giant lie that's going to happen. And remember, talking about toilets, that was a big thing for Trump, was talking about toilets and the rising of water, and you can't flush the toilets, and the shower heads are too weak, even though that's about water pressure. And oh my God, there's never any sort of fact check on these folks in real time in the public.
Here he was.
We are going to restore and secure America's borders just like we had them before, best ever. We built the wall, and now we will add to it. Now, we built the wall, we completed the wall, and then we said, let's do more, and we did a lot more.
It's not done, right?
It's not done, as those comments are basically self-contradicting. We finished it and then we said we'd do more. It's not true he completed it, and we know that from official data. According to an official report written by U.S. Customs and Border Protection, 2 days after Trump left office, there were 458 miles of wall completed under Trump. That's both what they call primary barrier and secondary barrier that reinforced existing barriers, but 280 more miles that had been identified for wall construction had not been completed. So this is an attempt to make it sound like he fully succeeded on a key signature campaign promise, but in reality, he only partially fulfilled it.
As always,
it's also worth noting that while president, and he controlled all three chambers of the House, the Senate, I should say all three branches of government, I should say, the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the presidency, he did nothing to change actual immigration policy in a bipartisan fashion. He did nothing to change immigration on the whole, besides punishing and further criminalizing people for doing the right path of seeking refugee status, of seeking immigration, of seeking visas. Of course, remember the actual average undocumented immigrant that lives in America, that has been here, has been from an overstayed visa, not somebody that has crossed the southern border. So when we talk about this stuff, yeah, we can talk about border security, but you have to come at it with a bipartisan. This is the one place that I would agree that we absolutely have to come out with this with a bipartisan look, because comprehensive immigration reform is not going to happen with one party, because one party is not going to address all of the issues. As much as I would wish the Democrats would, fine, give them borders, give them drones on the southern border, because of course we all know, anybody that's watching this knows, that a actual physical barrier does not make sense on the southern border. In some parts, sure, but having infrared, all these different technologies that are probably go way beyond my pay grade, are available, possible, and an investment that could be made, and it would take away the potential of this stupid talking point. However, you also should be looking at, and this is my opinion, creating a buffer zone where, okay, because this is the way that our immigration system works, remember, for refugees and people that are seeking asylum in this country, they actually have to cross the border first, then surrender themselves to ICE or the Customs and Border Patrol, then to seek asylum or refugee status. Then they are placed in housing, or they are placed in certain cities, and then they have to show up in wherever city they are for their court date to get approved or denied. The vast majority, the overwhelming majority of them show up to their court cases. However, you still have to cross the border to even have this possible. So, creating this zone of, okay, if we're going to keep this the way that it's going to be, you can show up here. The actual borders, you can show up here, my left hand, my right hand over here. This is the actual border. And then this buffer zone is where we process and take in people for accountability, for responsible immigration, etc. Then they don't even talk about DACA recipients, which I saw xenophobic bullshit from Dave Rubin talking about Giselle Fetterman, who was a DACA recipient herself, remember. But looking at people that are should be on the way to getting a pathway to citizenship, people that should have some form of legal residency, etc. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. This is something that Biden could lead in the next 2 years, maybe. I don't think the Republican. This is the part of what's practical and what is will be ideal. Because ideally, we could just have the Democrats say, okay, this is what we're actually going to do, and it's going to pass. And that's not the case. It's not going to happen. And without the filibuster going away, it's definitely not going to happen. And without control of the House, it's also not going to happen. So creating this bipartisan effort on an issue like this would be nice. I just don't see it happening. And someone like Trump is just lying about the southern border. The border doesn't stop people because it's not a physical barrier, and most places there aren't physical barriers. There are natural barriers like a river that separate it. But whatever. That is just one part of this fact check. So let's go back to it.
He likes to point the finger at someone else or do this whataboutism because he justified his current legal trouble saying that his predecessor is also guilty. Watch this.
The raid of Mar-a-Lago, think of it. And I say, why didn't you raid Bush's place? Why didn't you raid Clinton? 32,000 emails. Why didn't you raid Clinton's place? Why didn't you do Obama, who took a lot of things with him? We will dismantle the deep state and restore government by the people.
None of that checks out.
None of that checks out. I'm going to call this one a lie because he said this Obama stuff. He claimed Obama took documents himself in August, and it was debunked then by the National Archives and Records Administration. NARA explained in a public statement that it had taken custody of Obama's records after Obama's term, and it had itself taken those records to a facility that it managed in the Chicago area. And it said that as per federal law, quote, former President Obama has no control over where and how NARA stores the presidential records of his administration. So Trump is suggesting here again that Obama did something like what he did, personally taking documents to his home. With Obama, it just did not happen.
Yep.
And that is that. I'm trying to get this Christmas commercial off. But yeah, so not only what the fact checker said, I will say this because this is important to note. Although I think that Bush was a horrendous president, and what they did with Iraq and Afghanistan and all, just run through the line of what happened there, torture. the reason why his house wasn't raided was because he wasn't breaking the law in the same way that Trump allegedly was. And as much as I think that George W. Bush was committing war crimes, and the list goes on of those things, the torture regime was real. It's not just a fictional thing that happened. They didn't have to raid his house to figure that out. They don't have to. We still have Guantanamo Bay open. We still have these stuff. I mean, that's another topic for another day. But it's important to note. And Obama wasn't a criminal like Trump allegedly is. So that's why that hasn't happened. But let's shift away from the actual speech and let's look at, okay, we're in the midst of it now. We are already descending, because I say descending because it's not good. But we're descending and devolving already into the 2024 election cycle. Remember that if you live in Pennsylvania, that next year we actually have, in 2023, countywide elections and local elections. So don't forget that. But for all intents and purposes, most people will be looking to 24. And the biggest thing, and I kind of talked about this a bit last week, was with Ron DeSantis. And there's other folks that have been floated, like Mike Pence and Nikki Haley. Somebody else mentioned Mike Pompeo but I wouldn't count him in. I would take Nikki Haley, I would take Mike Pence, and I would take Ron DeSantis as serious people that would possibly run for this presidency. But like I said earlier, I think it's about a 75% chance that Donald Trump becomes the nominee. I think DeSantis has the next largest chunk of that because of his electoral success in Florida. And yeah, I mean that's basically the way that it's been painted. But the base of the Republican Party, and I'm not talking about like, okay, some country club guy and he just wants to vote for Republicans for tax cuts. They'll vote for a Republican either way. But the person that is going to go out and vote in the primary election, that is going to decide who the nominee is, who's going to be animated by the issues of the day, right now, I was just at the polls for the 2022 election. Those people are behind Trump. The people that supported Oz, the people that supported Mastriano here in Pennsylvania, they are behind Trump. Now, remember, this is not saying that I think Trump's going to beat Biden or beat the Democratic candidate. But I do think that Trump, frankly, I think if Biden runs, he wins as of today. Not a blowout, not a giant electoral success maybe for Democrats across the board. Who knows though? Because the issues of today the issues of today, like inflation, will probably be, more or less, I'm putting it in quotes, solved by then. But the issues of abortion will not be. The issues of the Supreme Court going after gay and trans individuals, and specifically governors going after gay and trans individuals and non-binary individuals, like DeSantis, like Abbott. The issues of immigration, of Greg Abbott and DeSantis and Trump and all of them going after migrants and demonizing them, that will not go away. So right now, I would say that Biden will bounce back, and the issues that plagued him this cycle, which were largely, again, remember that inflation is a global issue, not an American issue alone. So one way or the other, yeah, the gas prices are going to get blamed on the president. That's how it is. It's not factual. It's not real. The Keystone Pipeline did not create inflated gas prices, but that's what they'll say. And he will have to bite the bullet on that. But when it comes to the Republican primary, right now, if I had to put money on it, I think Donald Trump steamrolls through. The only way that I see Trump losing it is imploding and having a one-on-one. If multiple people hop into the Republican primary, Donald Trump has the largest base. We saw it throughout the last 6 years, 7 years. That 30% approval rate did not dip below 30 because those people are Trump fanatics, not supporters. They are fans. There's a difference. Being a supporter, like I'm a Bernie supporter, or I am frankly, in 2020, I was a Biden supporter. But that doesn't make me a fan. It doesn't make me a fanatic. That doesn't make my opinion of them, I don't think that they're infallible. I don't think that they are perfect. I don't think that I agree with them. I certainly don't agree with them. I don't agree. We should all recognize that we don't agree with anybody 100%. Politicians change. Politicians have their own ideas. We have our own ideas, and that's how it should be. That's what a republic is. We elect people to represent us. As close as we can get them, we can push them on the issues, and we can voice our opinions. But we're never going to agree with them 100%. But the Republican base does not dip away from Trump below 30%, which, remember, that 30% is about 48% of the actual voting population. So if you take that, there's a big chunk. That 30% extrapolated is probably close to 60, 70% of the Republican base. So now, of course, the polls in the post-election cycle say something different, but that is because it's being driven by a media narrative. A media narrative saying this is a return to normal and that DeSantis won so big and he's been on the media all along. Give it a couple of weeks. Give it some time. And I would say that the Republican Party switches back to Trump. That's my opinion. I actually would say that I don't hope that I'm wrong because I think also Democrats have a better chance running against Trump at this point. So I don't hope that Trump is the candidate for any reason other than saying I think Democrats have a better chance against him. But at the same time, this is the reason why the Pied Piper strategy, looping back, is risky, is because if you have a candidate that is worse, if they win, the outcomes could be potentially worse. But remember that I believe, and I think most people could be swayed on this, in governance, I believe that Trump and DeSantis would be one and the same. So functionally, I'd take my chances running against Trump at this point. And that means he would also be term limited out in 28 if he were to win. So there's at least that. That's base level, not even 24 hours after this announcement. That's my read on the thing. So while you're here, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. I know today's a shorter episode. I apologize. I'm recording this during lunch because of having a nonprofit event tonight for the Bucks County Housing Group. So go make a donation to the Bucks County Housing Group. And I might have an announcement regarding that hopefully soon for myself personally, but just would be nice to share with everybody. And from there, if you are watching on YouTube, subscribe button. That is down below me, right here. And you could hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. It helps us grow in the algorithm. You can see clips on Mondays, Fridays, and the live show every Wednesday. And you can follow the show on social media. You can follow me on Twitter at Con O'Hanlon. The show, Greater Society Media, on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And patreon.com/Greater Society Media to support for as little as $5 a month. And join the Discord server, which is down below, and you can voice your opinion there. But until next time, stay safe. Peace.